Welcome, Principal Matters podcast listeners. I'm so glad to be here with you. I am Dr. Jen Schwanke, co-host of Principal Matters, and I have a really interesting guest for you today. I found Crystal Williams on LinkedIn, which is a story I will tell here in just one moment. But first, to all of our listeners, I want to tell you who Crystal Williams is. She is a dedicated instructional leader with 20 years of experience, currently serving as a district literacy coach in Houston, Texas. Originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, she holds a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in elementary education. She's in her 6th year as an instructional coach. She's passionate about equity, justice, the transformational power of education, and has led data-driven coaching, modeled effective instruction, facilitated meaningful feedback conversations. She presents. She has delivered professional development to many teachers. And recently, a school that she supported was recognized with a Superintendent's Impact Award for instructional leadership. So a little bit personal about Crystal, too. She enjoys reading books on everything from open-hearted relationships to astrophysics and spending time with her boxer shepherd, Bernice. So welcome, Crystal. Thanks for being on our show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
So I found Crystal must think that Jen Schwanke's a little bit crazy because I read a post, Crystal, that you put on LinkedIn, and you were talking about the role of instructional coaches. And it really spoke to me because I'm going to be very, very honest here. When I was about 10 years ago, I was a principal, and I heard about instructional coaches maybe coming to my school, and I was a little annoyed because I thought, well, that's my job, first of all. And second of all, my teachers are amazing. Why they don't need an instructional coach. And I have come to be a 100% convert on that. I think that instructional coaches do so much good. And I really wanted to have your voice on the podcast because I think a lot of principals may not really understand the complexities, nuance, and outcomes of the role. So thank you for indulging me when I messaged you out of the blue and said, hey, thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. So,
Yeah.
if anything, I do appreciate like being able to have that balance of knowing that yes, coaching is one of those professions where we are working in the margins, so to speak.
Right.
But I also am advocating for us to be seen as more than just support and to be seen as instructional leaders.
Exactly. Exactly. So you wrote in that LinkedIn post that spoke to me so deeply, you wrote that coaching is one of the most misunderstood roles in education. So, knowing our audience's principals, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that principals might have about instructional coaches?
Um, I think it's something that you named just a moment ago, like, okay, why do I need, it's almost saying like, why do I need help? Or we're not sick here, or
Right.
I got this. So it is even a little bit maybe of like an ego thing too, like, why,
Yeah.
you're not needed.
Right.
Um, I think there's also a tendency to think that because, especially if we work at the district level, then we're spies. We're the curriculum police. We're watching everything that's happening on your campus and we're reporting it to someone somewhere. And that we can't fully be trusted. I think another piece that I have picked up is that like okay, nobody can talk bad about my teachers except for me, like
Right.
so.
Right.
And so if the coach comes in, it's like this protecting the flock, like don't stress them out, don't be going in their rooms, and so it could be all of those things that are misconceived.
Yes, I felt all of those things. I absolutely did, and it reminded me a little bit like some siblings. I'll trash talk my sister, but don't you do it, or I'm
Right.
gloves off. So I absolutely felt those things. I felt like it's kind of an ego thing. I know instruction. Why would I need help with that? First of all, second of all, don't you be coming in and telling us how to do things? But I have come to learn it's not that at all, and I think there's a lot of danger in thinking of coaches as spies, as though they're going to come in and kind of be in the middle of the leadership and the classroom and talking as though there's a problem in either end. So, you another thing that you said was that coaching can be invisible when coaches act like support staff. So tell us a little bit about that and how principals can help coaches not be invisible?
I think one of the most powerful things they can do is to meet with us initially when we come to their campus and introduce us to everyone on their campus. So even though you know that that coach might only be working with fourth and fifth grade math, like you still introduce them to all the staff so they know who this person is.
Right.
And that way it's not one of the stories I just heard from a colleague, yesterday who was saying like, somebody on my campus just asked me like, who are you? And it's the end of the year. And I just feel like, why are we here? So
Right.
when we don't get those introductions where the leader says, here's who this person is, like, and help sort of lend us a little bit of credibility, it can hurt the perception of who we are, and then we are just sort of like skulking in the shadows. We're always going to
Right.
somebody's room but never yours, and you don't know why.
Right.
So I think that that's something that's like to be considered. So on the flip side, when I have had a great welcoming, it has been like, welcome coaches, and here's your workspace, and here's a key so that you can get into the classrooms. And um, I don't know, like making sure that we're just set up. So like, is this the office furniture that you need? Okay, great. Um, and the introduction does happen in a way that is like, that feels true to the culture of that campus. Especially if the principal is like, let's take a look in the classrooms or let me introduce you, but without coming on so strong that we're seen as admin and that
Right.
we still
Yes.
get the opportunity to have a little bit of space there to say, I'm not here to evaluate you folks. I'm just coming in to look. I just
Yeah.
happen to be with your principal.
Right. Right.
Um,
Crystal, what I also found huge success with as a principal was not jumping in to be the hero. And here's what I mean by that. Teacher comes to me saying, "Hey, I've got this text that I'm supposed to share with students. I feel like there's a better text." Rather than saying, "Well, let me look at them. Give me those texts and let me take a look." I would say, "Why don't you talk to the instructional coach about that?"
yeah.
Letting go of some of my air quote power here and
Mhm.
saying, "You know what? There's actually somebody who probably knows this answer already." So, hopefully you've had that experience too, where principals have said, "Oh, actually not my sandbox. Go talk to the coach about that."
Yeah. Well, the structure in the district that I currently work for is that district coaches are there primarily to mm, build the capacity of the instructional specialist who's at that campus. And then that IS, I'm going to call them, the IS is
Yes.
building the capacity of the teachers. So the IS is seen as like the holder of content knowledge, whether it be
Yes.
math or reading or what have you. And so I think what I try to have happen is that even if the principal says, go to the coach, that I'm like connecting and
Right.
rerouting and like, go to the IS and like we can have this conversation together. And that way I really, really see myself as a connector. I'm connecting students to their teacher. I'm connecting and to each other. I'm connecting teachers to each other and to their IS. I'm connecting the ISs to each other across campuses to lean on one another and to their leadership because I have to leave.
Right.
Like, and they have to stay there. And I want
Right.
them to have built a network of trust with each other as a campus family once I move away.
Right. So that lends itself to this question. How do you, in your work, define the difference between support and leadership in the context of instructional coaching?
Okay. So
Okay, she
I think,
says. Okay. All right. She's like, now we're in it.
right. Well, I think that the mind frame or the questions that those two roles ask are very different.
Mhm.
Support is asking, what do you need from me? How can I help you?
Right.
And leadership is asking, what will move us closer to our shared goals?
Right.
So there is an element of support in leadership, right? Especially when we talk about some frameworks of servant leadership and things like that. But really, it's just that support is helpful. Um, Leadership is strategic
Okay.
and proactive. I will
Right.
say that. So it doesn't wait to be asked
Right.
how they can be used. So I think that the best coaches balance both.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to me. And you also mentioned, and this is where I kind of got shivers, when you said coaches are in the rooms where teaching shifts and clarity clicks. So tell me about a story or an example of a time that you witnessed that shift happen.
Okay. So one shift, this happened, let's see. Oh, so I was coaching at a school, coaching the IS, and she's leading the what we call CBPLs, the campus-based professional learning. Old school used to call it PLCs, right?
Yes.
So grade level is in there planning together, and she was struggling to relinquish control.
Right.
So normally everybody sits at the table and she's the one saying, okay, we're doing lessons 5 through 8 today, and let's take me through what your objectives are, and just sort of being the one to like move the meeting forward. And her instinct was to stay in this more directive role, and she was stepping in to provide answers before teachers really had time to think and show all of the thinking work that they had done when they internalized these lessons. So during one CBPL session, where I was having her do the gradual release. One teacher asked another teacher a question, one that was a deeper kind of question about practice. And I saw the IS like inhale to like jump
Right.
in, and I tapped her on the shoulder and tugged at her sleeve because we had that relationship, and I beckoned her with my finger, come here, oh, real quick, come here. And once we stepped out of earshot, I was like, I didn't want anything. I just wanted you to listen.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
and so 10 seconds later, the second teacher like asked a wondering question to the first teacher, and the first teacher answered their own question, right? And so, it took everything in me not to be like touchdown hands,
Right.
because I was like,
Yes. See?
like all excited off to the side, like they have it, let them go. And I think that it was that moment, like it was a quiet moment, um and it was a moment of stepping back, but it was a
Right.
powerful one.
Right.
And later when we debriefed about it, I dug in a little bit more into her hesitation or her fears around letting go. And I could sense that she was really in a place of, they won't need me anymore.
Right.
And I, I reminded her, it's not that they won't need you, it's that they need you for the parts that only your role can do, like observing patterns across classrooms and providing actionable feedback.
Right.
So that moment for her helped her realize that that leadership also means knowing when not to speak,
Right.
and that it is that she needs to trust the process of productive struggle.
I find that story so incredibly powerful because I was, and probably still in many ways am that person, Crystal. I'm the one that I'm like, okay, I got to fill the silence. I got to bring the answers. I have to jump in and make sure everybody knows that I know. But letting go of that, trusting that
Mhm.
your people got it and that you just kind of maybe need to give them time to take a breath. I mean, and that's a huge takeaway for our principals. If they're in a place where they feel like they're carrying all of the work, all the load, all the knowledge, they're probably micromanaging. They're probably not listening and letting their people do what they need to do. Um, what are in your experience, what are some of the most effective ways that coaches build teacher capacity, but also for a principal who maybe doesn't have a coach or who's advocating for the district to allocate a coach? How can they build that teacher capacity besides shushing their mouth and listening?
Okay. Um, so let's think about this. Well, it to me it means that you have to watch first, right?
Watch. Yep.
Um, you come with your data, you look at what has happened in the past, and then you're also just observing. Um, when a new coach comes in, we usually like we help each other, advise each other to don't even come in really with like much other than like if you've got a little notebook or something, then okay, but don't come in like typing on your computer and like sequestered off to the side. And it's just really I just came to see I came to see your kids. I came to get to know your kids. And
Right.
for that right there, that shift of I'm not watching you, I'm watching how your students learn
Right.
because that's kind of sets you up as not being across from each other, but now being side by side in this work of problem solving and seeing how we can like develop and push practice, right?
Right.
So I guess coming from that lens, like when I'm talking to a principal, I'm like, well, let's just see, let's just see how your teachers work. And when I'm talking to the teacher, let's see how your kids work, right? And I think that's one shift. The other
Right.
is when you are looking, it's sort of like you're doing the needs assessment in your brain
Mhm.
because practice, best practice, right?
Mhm.
So you're just watching to see like what patterns are evolving, and it could be something very simple, like I typically divide the page in half, and I'm watching what are the teacher's actions and what are the students' actions, so that I can start to see patterns evolve. And if something starts sticking out, such as I don't know the need for classroom management over content, then I'm like, oh, we're not going to be able to get to the content
Right.
till we address this first. Or I might need to just see like maybe there is something like the teacher doesn't ever get to the exit ticket. So maybe this is an issue about pacing. But once I move away from the observation and take time to reflect on those notes, and I have to do it like that same day, pretty much. It
Right.
has to be fresh because once you go to another classroom, even those details start mingling with each other. So I take some time to just look through the notes and go, well, is it really pacing? Because
Right.
I noticed that I wonder if this teacher was had truly internalized this lesson so that she could just ask the highest leverage questions rather than all like 20 questions that this curriculum has provided. So
Right.
maybe it's not so much pacing. She's trying her best to like follow what it says in the teacher's guide, but I don't know that she internalized what the heart of this lesson was so that she could just take the highest leverage questions and then scaffold so that she could anticipate misconceptions. So maybe it's planning side by side and anticipating student misconceptions, and that would address the pacing more than just giving her timestamps.
Right.
So I think that it's the shift of like we are working side by side in as partners, and then just watching. So that part is a little bit about like I might have to be quiet for a moment and just look and see like peek on what students are doing and how they're doing, like listen to their conversations. But then you can just write the teacher a little note. It was great seeing you today. Way to go on something specific that you saw in their classroom, like where they did um, make something visible, or did some total physical response or TPR or something. You just find like little something great and let it go. But it's your reflection later and your choice of the highest leverage next steps that you now know will be the thing that you are is like swirling around in your coach's brain, so that when you go later to talk to that teacher, if you wind up having that debrief, that you ask them the kinds of questions that lead them to understand where their own place or their own gap might be. And
Right.
of course, you got in your back pocket, you got an idea of where you're going, but you're not necessarily there to impose it on them, but to ask the questions that lead them there and to get excited with them and help them refine and land on a goal.
Crystal, okay, I want to talk about goals in a minute, but as I'm listening to you, it strikes me how much of a curiosity mindset you're using in your language. You have said several times, I wonder. You have said, listen, watch, learn. I think one of the mistakes I would make as a principal was, first of all, moving too quickly, seeing something, making a judgment, deciding this is good or this is bad, putting it in one of those buckets. And it strikes me that you are probably a very safe person with whom to work because you're not judging. So, talk to me about building trust and influence with teachers when you don't have formal authority. And here's why. As a principal, you're the boss, but you want that trust. You want them to be able to believe that you're not going to come in and make a binary judgment, good or bad. So, teach our listeners how, as a coach, you can build that trust and influence in their teaching.
Okay. So one, you have to respect them as a teacher, like that they are the ones who are in there every day. I get to waltz in and waltz out after 20
Right.
minutes, right?
Right.
Um, so they I trust that they know their students. I trust that they know that they're doing their best. I'm always
Right.
going to give that gift of gracious assumption that
Right.
everybody is doing the best with what they've got, right?
Right.
Even the students. And so if I'm talking to a teacher and we're analyzing student work, because that builds trust, right? That you're
Right.
willing to actually read those, interestingly written, um, compositions as developing fourth grade writers or something,
Right.
right? Like that you're
Right.
getting in the weeds with them. That when they're starting to even get frustrated or starting to judge their students' work in a certain way, you can say, hey, remember that she wrote this or he wrote this, they wrote this because to a learner, we're only making the responses that make the most sense for us at the time.
Right.
So whatever tools this learner had right there, this is what they're displaying. That's why we're analyzing the work to see why maybe they didn't access the other tools, like the anchor chart you made, for instance.
Right. Right.
And then we're also thinking about where were you at the time? Were you hanging up the anchor chart for the next lesson?
That's right.
Or were you in there probing and wondering, like, tell me why you thought that? So it's like that's part of building trust is getting in the weeds with them and helping them analyze their work so that they know what to do next, because that's where teachers get stuck is what do I do next,
Right.
as I'm asking a question during class or as I'm looking at student work. And I would say the other thing that builds trust as a coach is that when you're taking your notes, you are removing judgment. You're
Right.
taking low inference notes. You are not inferring anything. You're not a mind reader. You are not saying, oh, the kids were, students were engaged. The
Right.
teacher didn't seem prepared. It is 5 out of 20 students raise their hand in order to answer this question.
Yes.
Yeah. So that
Yes.
way, when you talk to the teacher later, they can trust your lens
Yes.
because you're not looking to catch them doing anything. If anything, you're trying to catch them being good.
Yes.
And
Right.
so you're trying to like develop that strength so that we can move from mountaintop to mountaintop. Like how can we use the strength in this other area where you're feeling like you're on a scale of 1 to 10, you keep telling me that you feel like the lesson was a 4 right there. So let's get the 9 energy over to the 4 spot.
Right.
Mhm.
Those listeners, I hope you'll push rewind and go back and listen to what Crystal just said, because all of those are not, it's not just coaches that can do that. Principals can absolutely do those things. And I think I love your idea of getting in and looking at the student work. How powerful would it be if a principal said, hey, let me take those stack of essays home. I really want to take a look at those. I bet teachers would be like, what?
Yeah.
Not to judge, not at all to judge whether or not you taught them well enough to get to this point, but to see what it looks like to be that learner.
Yes, I had a principal do that. I think it was the principal and the assistant principal would take all of the grade levels writing and read it all and give like a little bit of feedback, like something that had nothing to do with grading
Right.
necessarily. It was just more like, oh, I love your voice in this or whatever, right? Or like
Right.
just this really how clearly you painted this picture. And it gave them a pulse on where the students were. And
Right.
I don't know that I think they might have done it like maybe once a month or something. So something that was manageable for them. But
Right.
over the course of a school year, they could see the growing that was
Right.
happening. So if they saw that growth, sometimes display, like take copies or make copies and then display those pieces of student work at each grade level that they felt were exemplifying what we wanted from our young
Right.
writers.
Oh, and think how cool it would be to be a learner and get your paper back with your principal saying, I love this imagery, or what voice. That would be incredibly powerful.
Yes.
I mentioned we were going to circle back to talk about goals, and it's something you mentioned first, and I'm glad because I wanted to talk about how coaches or principals serving in an instructional coaching role can translate a school's bigger goals into daily instructional decisions and actions.
Okay. So when making the goal is really big. It's up here. It's what we want to see over time. Um, then it comes down to, well, backwards planning. Like,
Right.
what does it take in order for us to get there? What does somebody need to know in order for that to happen? What needs to be in place in order for this to be true? Um, what should we expect to see if this was our reality? So asking again those questions helps drill down to some of the smaller actions it would take. So if we want this to happen within the next 4 weeks, what should we expect to see in week 3 that would let us know by week 4 we got this?
Right.
What should we expect to see then? Oh, well, then we have to start that in week 2. But if everything that we need for these routines and procedures is not in place in week 1, we're not going to get the kind of
Right.
learning that and conversations that we expected to see in week 3. And how will they be pushing and extending and clarifying each other's thoughts as students in week 4, right? So
Right.
it does wind up taking all these little smaller steps and milestones so that we can manage this teacher's expectations around the fact that we're not going to see this in 24 hours. It's a process, it's a
Right.
practice. And we didn't get all of it today because it's not meant for all of it to happen today. It doesn't mean that what you did, even though you felt like you were on it and 50% of your learners answered the exit ticket right, that doesn't mean you did a horrible job. Remember that we are comparing it to 17%.
Right.
And so this is a huge gain to make in 2 weeks, right? So
Right.
you're helping to continually like celebrate, like reflect, and like look back on what we've done. And let's make sure that we're like measuring it not only against what was in the past, but toward the rubric that we set for where we want to be. So if
Right.
we are making progress from where we were and we're heading toward where we want to be, then we're on the right track, baby.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
So yeah, being able to set those goals and making sure that they're manageable and relevant and
Right.
timely and all that good stuff. We help them make those smart goals, but then we champion them and be that extra pair of eyes along the way to say, do you see how
Right.
brilliant that was? Did you see? Did that surprise you when your student said that? Did you see like that move that you made right there? That's what we're talking about.
Right. You
So
guys, listen, for my listeners, I wish you could see Crystal. She's a very animated. She's shifting her body. She's using her hands. This is one of the times I wish it wasn't just an audio podcast. I wish we had video because you are bringing life to that conversation about okay, week 4, week 3, week 2, week 1. You're bringing life to it, and I appreciate that. The other thing you do, Crystal, I assume you do this. When I ask you a tricky question, and this is something principals I want you to start doing. You say, okay, okay, okay. I have a friend, her name's Melissa. She's wonderful. And she does this. And I find it so soothing because what it says is, okay, we got this. Let's think. I don't have the answer maybe at the very tip of my tongue, but let's process it. And I think for principals or coaches who are working with teachers, when you have that sort of response to a question, it says, all right, we're going to do this. So I love that. So thank you for using that coach language. I think all principals can benefit from that.
I have you're right. I am aware of that somewhat. I have an emerging sense of awareness.
Yeah, I love
So,
it. I love it. Keep doing that, please.
because I'm trying to give myself wait time.
Yes. No,
I'm
it's so
establishing
good.
think time for myself.
It's
And
so
I
good, and
find that
it's
my answers are a little richer when I do
yeah.
give myself permission to do that.
That's exactly right. I love it. And it's a brilliant way to say, we're thinking about this, but I'm bringing you along with me to do
Right.
that.
Yes.
Um, Here's a question for you. You noted in your LinkedIn post that the right people notice, and you were especially referring to teachers and students. And so, how do you know, Crystal? What are some signs that your coaching is making an impact, even if it's not formally recognized?
Okay. So I did make another post about that
Yeah.
shortly after I think
Yeah.
we had first encountered one another
Yeah.
because it was on my mind. And where everybody's waiting for the big test scores to come back, here
Hmm.
at the end of the year, and they might not come back until the summer. And
Right.
so we, as coaches, we may not know what some of our quantitative data looks like. And so we need to be able to look for how we are making an impact in between those benchmarks, right? And so some of the things that I look and listen for are changes in teacher language.
Hmm.
So they go from being really broad, like I want my students to be more engaged, to um, during the do now, I want to make sure I have sentence stems for my emergent bilingual students.
Right.
So they're getting narrower in their focus. I also look for an increase in student engagement where the students are showing that they love to learn. They're excited to come to class. And when you give them something I saw today that was so beautiful, when you give them a task and they're like, well, how much time do we have? And the teacher is like, how much time do you think you need? And and they're like, okay, well, 10 minutes. And she's like, she might give them the 10 minutes, but if it's something that she knows that she wants to push them on, she'll say, you have 5.
You have
And
five.
then
Right.
and then
That's
the
cute
time
in all your 10 minutes. That's cute. Let's go with five.
that's right. And then what happens immediately is like there isn't even like a it's just more
Right.
like their eyes get a little big, but then they're like
Okay.
ready to pounce. And then the
Yes.
moment like the timer goes, I said, we were filming a video production for to make an instructional library, and I was excited to be the producer of that. But I whispered to the program director next to me. I said, the moment she let them go, look at everybody typing, and it's dead silent in here.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're trying to hack into a database.
Right. 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 But they were
So
focused.
they
Right.
were focused. It was that focused effort. And I also see a difference in instructional decision making.
Ah,
So when they start saying things like, I planned this, Coach Williams, look, I planned this because I think it will target a misconception.
right. Right.
Go ahead, boo boo. Like, yes, that's what
Right.
that's
Right.
snaps for you. Goosies, like I got
Right.
goosebumps because you're now thinking, with the end in mind and thinking like a second grader would think, So
Right.
that's what your students need from you. So when you hear that, you know that the coaching has taken root.
Hmm. Right.
For quantitative data, you'll see growth in exit ticket accuracy. You
Hmm.
will see growth in improved proficiency on those on your state standards.
Sure.
So on those priority standards, and then you'll also see those upward trends in student performance. And you don't necessarily have to wait till a big test in order for that to
Right.
happen. So when we see those areas of student performance on formative as well as summative assessments, um, then especially in the areas of coached practice,
Aha.
then that's when the coaching is working.
That makes sense. Yes, that makes such sense. So I I hate how fast time goes when I'm talking to someone so stinking smart and so accomplished in her professional role. So let's talk about what it's like for you. What's the hardest part about coaching that people
Ooh,
don't talk about?
yeah. Um, I would say like the emotional
Hmm.
toll that this work can take on you. That it's the emotional weight
Yeah.
because coaches are often the people that teachers cry with.
Right.
Um, not their principals unless they're already, like,
Right, right.
already on the edge, but not necessarily their colleagues, but us, because we
Yes.
sort of created that space of looking at the mess. Like, we're your coaches, yes, on one hand, the principal is looking at us because we're looking under the rug
Right,
where some
right.
things may have been swept, right? We're
Yes,
there
exactly.
day after day, but also that's what builds the trust with teachers and the school community is we're there day after day. And
Right,
so we hold space for others' feelings of pressure,
right,
of doubt, exhaustion, often without recognition.
right,
And that kind of trust is powerful.
right,
But it also comes with a responsibility that few talk about. So, for instance, teachers are very vulnerable with us in ways that they aren't with anyone else. And sometimes those conversations move into territory that feels more like therapy than
right,
coaching.
right.
And I think it's really important that districts, leaders, I don't know, your professional learning department or whoever is over coaches, like they need to clearly define what our quote unquote, like what our lane is
Right,
and what isn't. Because we need clear protocols on how to respond when a teacher says something serious like, I don't think I can come back to work, or
right,
even more serious than that.
right,
I don't want to be here anymore.
right.
We need to know how to hold space without carrying the weight alone. And coaching is deeply human work, and we can't do it well without support.
That is so profound and so real and so authentic. And I thank you for that because I think teachers need that person. They need to be able to say, I'm feel like I'm failing. And like you said, serious words can come out of someone's mouth when they're in that place. And it does feel like therapy. And there is a lane there
Mhm.
where you're right. Coaches and principals too need to know when this is the expertise area they're bringing and maybe when it's not, because I mean, let's be real, teaching is so emotional and there's so many critics and you never know who's going to come out of left field with a criticism or a judgment. And so sometimes the coach is the person that they go to. What does, as you're carrying that heavy weight, as you're thinking about that emotional toll, you still seem to me full of joy and passion and desire to do good work. And one of the phrases that you said was leading like it matters. What does that look like for you on a daily basis?
Um, for me, I believe that every interaction, no matter how small, shapes culture and learning. And it means showing up every day with
Mm.
purpose, staying rooted in your values, and helping others connect daily actions to bigger goals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's asking yourself, what would I do if this moment really matters? And
Right.
then do it.
And then do it. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly
so,
right. Oh,
so yeah, keeping, like you said, keeping joy,
yes.
equity in the center of what we do is important. I love hugs from students and all those things.
Right.
I love working with people. I always get a little leery when somebody says, "Oh, I want a job out of the classroom," but then they kind of seem like they can't stand adults, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
this may not be your bus, honey. Like, maybe
Right.
we'll wait at
Exactly.
the stop for yours. But I think that ultimately, as I mentioned before, yes, we are in the margins, and it does take a certain amount of finesse to work in the margins, right? And to not center yourself in this work. It does take a level of humility to be able to push from the outside and push everybody closer to the center. But I just love that once you do that, the momentum doesn't stop.
Right. Right. Well, listeners, I wish Crystal and I were hosting a huge coffee talk right now because this is so fun. She's passionate, she's animated, she loves what she's doing, I can tell. And principals, I think that there's so much to be gleaned from the knowledge of an instructional coach, but also one that's clearly, I mean, wow, Crystal, you know your stuff. You must be constantly reading and learning from the coaching world, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we learn from each other. Like, fishbowl me, let me record
Right.
my feedback conversation with this IS, and then you other coaches tell me what happened.
Yeah.
So there had to be some hard points in there where they were like, oh, this is where you lost your coaching.
Right. Right. Well, this has been fantastic. Crystal, where can people, I mean, I stalked you and hunted you down on LinkedIn. Is that where people could find you if they want to know more?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm Crystal Williams. You know, I can, I'm happy if you want to share my link or anything,
Yep.
but yeah, that's where people can find me.
Perfect. Yep, that's what we'll do. Listeners, as you know, in the show notes, we'll have Crystal's bio and where you can find her on LinkedIn. But thank you, Crystal. This has been such fun to talk to you.
Oh, I had fun too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. And thank you all to Principal Matters listeners. It's been great to have you tuning in. Take care, everybody.